We're going to be in Hebrews chapter 1, verses 5 through 14. But I want to make some observations about how these verses relate to verses 1 through 4. We see in verse 2 that the world was created through Jesus. We'll see the same thing in verse 10. We see also in verse 2 that the nature of Jesus is highlighted. Right? Jesus is eternal. Jesus is glorious. And we'll see the same thing in verses 11 and 12. Then we see in verse 3 that Jesus is exalted as the Davidic king to the right hand of God the Father in verse 3. And we'll see the same thing in verse 13. So already we see that the text is highlighting that the world was created through Jesus, that Jesus is eternal and unchanging, and that he's the Davidic king. We'll see how these themes play out now in verses 5 through 14. In this section, the author of Hebrews is comparing Jesus with the angels as he demonstrates that Jesus is superior. So we'll begin in verse 5. For to which of the angels did God ever say, right? God never said these things to the angels, "You are my son, today I have begotten you." This is a quote from Psalm chapter 2. And then he alludes to 2 Samuel 7 in the rest of the verse. Or again, "I will be to him a father, and he shall be to me a son." This verse is showing that Jesus is the promised Davidic king. Jesus is the Davidic king who will rule the world. That can't be said of angels. Jesus is superior to them. Then we go to verse 6. And again, when he brings the firstborn into the world, talking about the incarnation of Jesus, he says, "Let all angels worship him." The angels are worshiping Jesus. Jesus is superior to them, as evidenced by the fact that they're worshiping him. Then we see similar types of arguments in verses 7 through 12, where we see that Jesus is eternal, unchanging, he's the creator. He quotes from all sorts of different places in the Psalms. Of the angels, he says, "He makes his angels winds and his ministers a flame of fire." But contrasting the angels here with the Son, but of the Son he says, "Your throne, O God, is forever and ever. The scepter of righteousness is the scepter of your kingdom. You have loved righteousness and hated wickedness. Therefore God, your God, has anointed you with oil of gladness beyond your companions." Right? So there's this contrast here. Verse 7, he makes his angels winds. They're subject to change. They're not eternal. They change. But God's kingdom, the Davidic kingdom that will be established through this Davidic king that we've already seen in Psalm chapter 2 and 2 Samuel 7, his throne will last forever and ever. And then we'll see in verse 10, "And you, Lord, laid the foundations of the earth in the beginning, and the heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish, but you remain. They will all wear out like a garment. Like a robe you will roll them up. Like a garment they will be changed. But you are the same, and your years will have no end." Right? So the world was created through Jesus. They will change. They will perish. They will wear out. They will be rolled up. They will be changed. But the Son, in his nature and in his what he does, right? He will remain the same, and his years will have no end. He's eternal. That can't be said of the angels. The angels are not eternal. The angels were created. Right? Angels change, but Jesus remains the same. Angels were created, but Jesus is the creator. Then finally in verse 13 and 14, And to which of the angels has he ever said, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet? This is an allusion, or a direct quote from Psalm 110. Jesus is the Davidic king who will rule the world, contrasted with verse 14. Are they not all ministering spirits? Right? So Jesus is the Davidic king whose enemies will be a footstool for his feet, and the angels are spirits sent out to serve for the sake of those who are to inherit salvation. So this whole section is talking about the superiority of Jesus over the angels. And we'll see why this is important in chapter 2. Because Jesus is superior to the angels, you should listen to his message. He's divine, he's a creator, he's unchanging. And look to Jesus as this one who's eternal. Look and praise the one who is... angels are marvelous, aren't they? If you read about how people respond to the vision of angels, they fall to their knees. They're marvelous creatures. They're powerful creatures. But Jesus is significantly more marvelous and significantly more powerful than angels. He created them. Right? So this text points us to Jesus, that he's superior to the angels, and it shows us because of who he is, we should heed his message. See you guys next time.